Hi, I'm Felix, and this is my second video in the series Blender for graphic designers. If you haven't watched the previous videos, I would highly recommend you to do so. I initially planned to have this number 2 part in one single video, but since it got longer than expected, I will be splitting it up into 3 parts, and this is the first one, focusing on lights. Like in the first video, I will be showing all the commands and inputs in this bottom left corner of the screen. So if I forget to mention a shortcut, you can just look there and see what buttons I have pressed. And as in the previous video, we're gonna start with a new Blender scene, and we're gonna go ahead and delete our default cube by pressing X and hitting delete. And then we're gonna add a mesh plane using Shift A and then just selecting the plane here. And then we're gonna go ahead and scale that plane up using the S key and then just moving the mouse to make it bigger. And of course, since this video will be focused on lights, materials, and camera settings, we need something to look at and to throw light at. So I'm going to use the import images plugin again and import another design. All right, so there we have it. Of course, right now it sits in the middle of our background plane. So we are going to go ahead and press G, hit the mouse wheel to lock it to an axis, in this case the Z axis, and move it above our background plane. And right now, of course, we don't see any lighting preview because we're still in the solid mode. So we're going to go ahead and switch into the rendered mode by clicking this little icon up here. And there we go. We do have our render preview. We see the texture of the imported plane, and we see the shadow that our current lighting setup is throwing. So first of all, we're gonna stay with the lights. I'm just gonna select this one right here and then go into the light properties tab down here, the green light bulb. And then we're gonna just quickly go over the most important settings of this type of light, the point light, which basically functions like a light bulb. So it's a singular source of light that emits light from a point into all directions. So it's omnidirectional. You can adjust the color of the light using the color picker here. And of course, that will also give you a preview. Then of course you can adjust the power of the light, so make it more dim or really bright. And you of course also see the results directly in the render preview. I'm gonna keep that at 1000 watts for now. And then the next and one of the most important things about the point light would be the radius, so the size of the light. If you have a very small radius, you get very clearly defined shadows, sharp edges, like we see right now. They're fairly sharp, and we could make them even more sharp by adding another 0 to the radius, and then you see it recalculates it, and it's a little more precise. And if we make the radius bigger, for example, use a meter instead of a centimeter here, we instantly see we get a really soft shadow. So this is like a big softbox or some kind of a diffused light source. So this is pretty much it for the point light. You can go into these other settings if you want to tweak it even more. But we're going to go ahead and look at the other lights that are offered to us here. So the one right next to the point light is the sun. And if you just switch from the point to the sun, you see it just keeps the strength. However, the sunlight works differently than the point light, so it's not a something that is calculated in watts. So it's a color that's calculated in watts per square meter. So this is really, really, really bright. Using a value like 10 gives you nice results. And then we do not have a radius but an angle, and this is pretty much the size of your sun in the sky. So if you want to have light that's similar to the light we have on Earth, you just put in this suggested angle of 0.199. Then you see you get more defined shadows. And what's special about the sunlight is the light rays are all parallel to each other. So you get shadows that are very, equirectangular, probably the right word, but you don't have distortion in the shadow that you can observe when using the point light. If I switch back to that, then you see you have this distortion in the shadow, and using the sunlight just gets rid of that kind of distortion for you. So this is something that the sunlight does especially well. You just have to figure out how you want to tweak your settings. So sunlight, another option to light your scene. Next to the sun, we have the spotlight. This is a pretty straightforward thing, and it also shows you in this preview how it's set up right now. Of course, we have to crank up the power again, and there you see it. It's just a spotlight, so it emits light from a point light source like the point light before, but it only casts this spot, and the regions outside of that are unlit. And you can adjust the radius of the light again, so make the shadows more soft or a little sharper. And then, of course, you can adjust the angle of the spotlight as well as the blend, so give you a very straight edge to the light when using a really low value for the blend parameter here, or if you put it up to 1, you get a really, really soft edge here of your light. And that takes us to our last light, the area light, and this is pretty much a softbox. So you can just adjust the size here, and in the preview you also see now we have this big square rectangular light source, and of course the bigger it is, the softer the shadows in your scene. And like before, you can adjust color, you can adjust power, and all these other parameters based on what you're planning on doing. And of course, it gets really interesting when you start combining different light sources. So something that you could do is, for example, have this big softbox lighting the scene, and then using Shift A and selecting light, point light, add another light source. We can move that around using the G for grab again, and just changing the values. And then you can, for example, add some color to your scene, lighten up the shadows. You could also go ahead and create another light, maybe one that gives you a more defined shadow over there. And then you can just go ahead and see what happens if you change the parameters, and fairly quickly you can you can create complex lighting situations for your scenes. All right, and this is where we're gonna leave this video, and we're gonna look at materials in the next one.